Hey guys, how are you? Welcome back to my now existing channel. I'm super excited for this video. I picked up the camera for this video, guys. If you know me, you know that Pham has been one of the longest booktubers that I've watched throughout the lifespan of my years, and she is the one that inspired me to pick up a book again and to romanticize books. And guess what? She released her book, and I have with me the copy of Just Friends, guys. I believe I have like one of the first special edition copies. It says here, turn the page for an exclusive behind the scenes annotated chapter by Pham. Now, I know the Target has like this part decorated. It also is white paper, I think. I still have this version because I pre-ordered it. Interior, the back. There's this little blurb and it says, for Ryan, who made my life a romance book before I discovered them. And it's funny because I first started watching Haley before I started watching Ryan. And then I really liked Brian's videos. So now, as YouTubers, I don't know them personally, but I really love their work that they put out. And then I got this little handwritten blurb note by Haley. I almost cried, actually. It's like the most sweetest message. Honestly, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, it's probably like, basically says, hi Reader Pops, which is what she calls us. She says, if you're reading this, that means you are holding the first printing of my first book. That automatically shoots you up to OG status, and that can never be taken away from you. I love that. Affirm me, please. But on a real note, thank you, in caps. Thank you for giving my writing a chance. Thank you for your optimism and support. She says thank you a bunch of times that it just really touches my heart. Especially to those of you who have been following my writing journey before I ever even announced the title or the plot, which is like I have been watching the videos that she has been teasing us with. By picking up Just Friends, you are making my dreams come true. So once again, thank you. By Pham. And you know what's interesting about this, guys? Before we get into the cover and everything, I'm gonna try not to spoil because I want to do a no spoiler book review. I've always loved Haley's reviews on books. And it's interesting because I heard a lot of takeaways from this book. I feel like I'm so picky with my books in a way that others might not be picky with their books. Like, for example, I like clean romance, closed door romances. I love deep topics. If you know me, if you've been watching my channel for a while, when I read books, I'm always like, I need to have a takeaway when I read. Like, I need it to be more life-changing, life-altering, have me thinking about this for days, than like, oh, this is so cute. Like, you know, I do read here and there. I've had read books like that in the past. When I'm thinking about books that I've read in the past, I'm thinking about those that really moved me. For example, so crazy, right? Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. Now, I know a lot of people have different thoughts. That's such a book that I always talk about because, yes, like, it's one of the few select books that I've read. It talked about these issues, like social class issues. I did not know where Colleen Hoover was gonna go. It really made me think about life. All right, guys, I'm gonna start with a few of my thoughts. I am in the middle of chapter 6 and I have a lot highlighted so far, guys. I really am resonating with this book. I wanted to mention the things that I am enjoying so far. What I love so far within Haley's writing style is the vocabulary that she uses, and I know that for some this was probably a turnoff, but I love it. I mean, I catch myself circling words and then going to Google searching up what it means. And these can be like words I've heard before, but like the way in which she uses it, I'm like, this is interesting. Like, what does it actually mean? And I feel like I'm learning so much. This is an example of how I've been doing it. For example, ejected. That was a word that I was like, I think I know what it means, but let me search it up. I also kind of mentioned, but the topic is about grief, and so far it has resonated with me a lot. I found a lot of similarities within Blair and myself. The timelines really do it for me, and it's written in a way where I feel like it transitions well. Another pro, I said the short chapters. In short chapters, you have to like build really quick to keep that ongoing momentum, which really works well because I find myself going to the next. Like, if I really wanted to, I could probably finish this book soon. I love being taken behind the scenes and the thoughts of characters, which is something I've always said when reading books, and I think it's something she does very well for Blair. This is so funny. Like, this is an internal dialogue and I love it. It's been 2 seconds since the interview began and I've already forgotten to behave like someone trying to get hired. She is capturing the setting so well. I am envisioning every single scene in my head from the coffee shop, and the cover actually helps too, if I'm being quite honest. I have finished reading Just Friends and I'm here to give you my final thoughts and review on it. So first things first, I wanted to share a few of my favorite quotes that stood out to me, and just to really talk about Haley's writing and how I really feel like it's original in its own way. So to really emphasize that point, I wanted to share some quotes. I am really trying not to spoil, so I picked the most generalized ones, I guess, that still really impact me. Page 66 annotated, and the quote says, "Like a dog returning to its own vomit." I highlighted this quote because I was like, wait, this is literally a scripture. So there was a little biblical reference, and then I did search up the scripture and I found out that there was some inspiration from Proverbs 26:11 that mentions a dog returning to its own vomit. It really reflects Haley in her essence and how she's constantly being inspired by her faith. So the next quote is on page 73. I kid you not, this quote I took with me in my personal life. So the quote says, "Shouldn't the world slow the frivolous tasks of life disappear while the tectonic plates of my life shifted?" She's going through grief, and that grief is so heavy. I really love that, and I feel like that's so real because like last year I was going through like a really hard time, and I'm like, why is everything so normal? Everyone's acting the same. No one can see behind the pain. So I really truly love this quote, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Oh, this one was so good. It starts from 112 actually. It says, "Walk like a duck, talk like a duck, hang out with other ducks, you start to think you are a duck. But I'm not a duck, Declan." That's what Blair says to Declan, and he's lost, and I was lost reading that at first too. But then Blair says, "What I mean is, I grew up in this town because my great aunt could afford it. So I hung out with kids whose parents could afford it. And I started to forget that I wasn't like them." When I tell you how relatable that quote was, I grew up in very distinct neighborhoods. The most recent place that I moved to is very different from the place that I grew up in. But I feel like in my heart, I will always know struggle because I've struggled. It just kind of like reflects back to you when you're talking to people who already grew up like in a more stable condition than you. You start to get the sense of like, I love you, you're my friend and everything, but we're totally different. And maybe you can afford this, but I can't. The reason why I feel like I got this idea in the first place was because I'm hanging out with you. So 284 was the last one that I wrote for a quote. This one says, "It made me wonder what I was so upset with them about. Perhaps it was easier to convince myself they weren't there for me when what I really was mourning was our distance." Now, this is another relatable thing that I highlighted because a lot of times in my life, I've had friendships. I've gotten upset for like small things of like, oh, they didn't text me happy birthday, oh, they didn't remember this, they know I'm struggling, and they never reached out. I was just in this cycle of being stuck because I'm like, well, it's not their fault, you know, like they don't need to do all of that. It really makes sense when she said what I was really mourning was our distance, because now you have to catch up on the time that you spent apart, new things, new discoveries, new phases of life, and that was what was missing. I really loved the unspoken tension and awkwardness and silence that both Declan and Blair had. There was no pettiness in the beginning of the book. Also, I realized Blair is an avoidant. She runs away from a lot of her things, which makes sense for her background and the way that her life played out. I'm an avoidant too, and it's not something that I take pride in, but I just felt kind of seen in a lot of ways that Haley would write Blair's personality. You know, I can't be mad because I'm kind of the same too, so it is kind of real. To move on, I want to talk about the last few sections of the book. Towards the end, the miscommunication did get a little repetitive, Blair was like, he likes me not, he likes me not. And then the more miscommunication that kept being added with the, I'm sorry, I didn't know, if only I knew, I'm sorry, if only I knew. I felt like it was just like being dragged, and then I just kept reading that and reading that. I felt like there was just like a tug, and I was just like in the middle of it, like, okay. The letter in the ends was like a breath of fresh air. After reading and being in a tug and pull, I was like, okay, what's gonna happen? And so reading that letter, finally, I was like, okay, now, like, they're getting it. They're getting to that point where reconciliation is happening, okay? I'm a sucker for the I love you speeches in movies and books. The admittances mean a lot to me because my love language is words of affirmation. So to hear people finally coming to an agreement and understanding of each other is so cute. Now the ends was super good. Loved it. I felt like the epilogue made up for a lot of the things that I talked about before. I'm like, what's gonna happen with the little birdhouse? And we find out what happened with the birdhouse. The explanation and reasoning before that scene happens with the bird analogy was top. Now for the rating, drumroll please. 3.8 out of 5. My average rating is a 3.5 for romance books. I'm really picky with romance books. This was a really great debut novel for Haley, and I wouldn't be able to write a debut novel like this. And I'm so glad that she took her time in it and she really gave herself a chance, because there's something really good going on for her with writing. Thank you guys for watching and for always supporting. I'll see you when I'll see you. Bye.